Hey there, everyone. So in the last video, we started off with doing the basic skinning of our character and just getting that started, but we haven't refined the rig yet. There's still some air issues with the weight painting that we'll need to address. But what I really want to do is move on to the face right now, because if anything is going to go wrong in this process, it's going to be in the face. So I want to get that out of the way, because if something goes wrong, I might need to redo the skin painting in general, and I could lose a bunch of work that I do on the body if I need to restart somewhere during the face. This step is optional. Not every rig needs a face. If you're not doing a complex face rig on your character, you're just leaving it as is, you can move on to the next video. So to get started, I'm going to open up the face tab. And similar to when we were working on the body, there's a list of submenus here, and they are sort of meant to be done in approximately the order they're listed in. So we're going to start here at pre. So the first step is we need to define what certain parts of our model are for advanced skeleton. So for example, we need to define what are the eyes, what is the head, what is the face, what are the teeth, so on and so forth. So the first thing it wants us to do is to go in and make a mask of our face. And to do that, we're just going to select all the faces that we want the face rig to affect. So to do that, I'm going to turn my face off of reference. I'm going to select just the face, which if you model it like me, also includes the body. I'm not going to have the eyebrows or anything, or the eyes or anything there. I'm going to go to my side view. Oops, I need to select again. I'm going to go to my face mode. And then I'm going to, on the left side, I'm going to select my lasso tool, so I can go through and lasso select through the whole face. I just want to get a little bit of the neck there, not too much. Get the whole face. And holding control, I'm going to unselect some of these faces because I don't need all of these. And hold control and shift to add some back in. About that much is good. And then I'm going to go over here and hit mask. And now you can see next to where I hit the mask button, it's filled in that text parameter with basically what is my selection. Next step is pretty simple. I'm just going to select whatever object is the face object, which in this case is just my entire body without the clothes or anything. Hit face. Now for all heads, I'm going to go back over here to my perspective view and pull out my outliner. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to select my body, I'm going to get my eyes, my eyebrows, my teeth, the tongue, that second eye, and my eyelashes. And I'll get my hair in there too for good measure. And then I'm going to hit all head. And it's the same process for all these individual objects. I'm going to go through and find the right eye. My joints are getting in the way, so I'm going to click this deformation system group. I'm going to add it to its own layer. I'm going to call this layer skeleton layer. Save it. Set it to reference. Now I can't select it anymore. I'm going to select my right eye. Hit right eye. Same with the left. Hit teeth top, upper teeth, teeth bottom, lower teeth, tongue to tongue, eyebrows, and eyelashes. If you have any extra objects like a mustache or beard or anything like that that should still be attached to the face but isn't clearly one of the things outlined, go ahead and select those objects and hit extras. Next, you'll be asked to do a model check. It's just going to do a check for symmetry, just like we did when we first started on the body. If there's any asymmetry in your model, you'll probably run into some issues, which means you'll just have to kind of repeat some steps. If your model is non-symmetrical, then you can specify here with this checkbox. And then it will just prompt you to repeat the face rigging on both sides rather than just one. Here you'll also be asked what kind of rig you want to make for the face. So generally there are 3 kinds of rigs for the face. There's joints, blend shapes, and mixed. Joints are like the body, where it's basically just going to create more of these bones to control your rig. It's just going to have a ton of them in the face, and we'll use controllers to move those joints around. This is certainly the easiest option, and the option that I'm going to start with today. So a blend shape rig will basically allow you to actually sculpt the individual poses that your face can be in. So this would start you off with a basic series of poses, and then you could go into, say, the pose for when your character blinks their right eye, and then you could adjust how the shape of that eyelid appears while blinking. Same thing if your character is smiling or frowning, you could go in and adjust the specific way your character's face deforms in those instances, and so on and so forth for every conceivable controller on the face. This method gives you a greater amount of control over your face rig. However, it also makes your character a lot more processing intensive. And as such, it might make it more difficult to work with on a lower end computer, or it might make it not very suitable for a game engine. So there's pros and cons to both joints and to blend shapes. And then there is mixed, which is primarily blend shape driven, but you will also have joints on top of that to have greater control. I'm going to start with just a joints rig for now. However, later down the line, I might need to make some changes to a particular pose, and at that point, I can turn it into a hybrid rig. So there's a couple more little options we can start with. There's a simpler eyelids, which I don't think we want to do. I'm fine with having a few extra controllers. You could specify that this is for a game engine, and it'll add some restrictions to your character so that it can work in Unreal or Unity. And then there is a couple different options for Roblox or Apple ARKit or Snapchat if you happen to be making this for any of those. And this last option, Advanced, basically lets you use Advanced Skeleton to put a face rig onto a rig that was not made in Advanced Skeleton. Okay, now that I have defined all of my head objects, I'm going to go to the Fit tab. So now in the Fit tab, we're going to be doing something similar to what we did in the pre-tab where we were selecting our specific objects. But now we're going to be getting a little bit more in depth into this. So for a lot of these, we're going to be actually selecting the specific edges that define our eyelids, our lips, so on and so forth. So the first one we do is we're going to select our eyeball again. And be sure that you are working on the left side. So I'm going to select my left eyeball and select eyeball. Go ahead and hit OK. And for each of these options, we're going to go into the question mark, and we want to double check that these are in the placement that is defined in the pop-up window. So that looks about right. So I'm going to leave it as is. Next, we're going to go to the eyelid outer. So here, I'm going to go to my edges. And it might help you to turn off your smooth preview by pressing 1. And we're just going to select the edges that define kind of where that eyelid begins. Once I have that selected, I'm going to hit eyelid outer. And once I do that, it draws these yellow and green shapes over my edges that help me visualize the selections I have made. If you notice, the top and the bottom half of this are different colors. The top half is green and the bottom half is yellow. The difference in color is meant to visualize, for me, which side of the eyelid will come down when the eye blinks and which side will move up. And I'm actually not quite happy with where this division between the top and the bottom is, because the yellow goes up of just one edge higher than what I imagine to be sort of the dividing line here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this selection I've just made by hitting the checkbox to delete eyelid outer. And now I'm going to go to my modeling toolkit, make sure I'm in multi-component. Now with my edge loop selected still, I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to select the vertices that I want to be the corners of my eyelid. I'm going to hit that again. And now that division looks more like I want it to. Moving on to eyelid main. It's the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and add my various additional head parts to a new layer. Just turn off the visibility on that so I can work on it a little more clearly. I'm going to hit hide on my eyeball. And now back in edge mode, I'm going to select this edge loop, which defines the corner of the eyelid before it rolls into the eye socket. I'm going to hit eyelid main. There we go. And now we're going to define the inside of the eyelid. So I'm going to hit assist, and it actually does this goofy thing where it draws out the eyelid so I can see better. I'm just going to grab this edge loop right here. That's sort of the end of where I want the deformation to go. And so anything on this side of that edge loop is what I want to move when the character's blinking. Anything on this side, I want to be stationary. Turn off the assist. I'm going to hit eyelid inner. Now the lip outer, it's a similar process. I'm going to go to edges. Select this lip. Just remember whatever's kind of the outer edge of this. Hit lip outer. Looks like it figured out exactly what I wanted for that division. That's good. Same thing with lip main. Grab what is kind of like that peak in the middle. Or rather, which edge loop comes the closest to touching on the top and the bottom. Hit lip main. Then lip inner. It's going to do an assist. And you still might want to just go inside for this one. It's a little non-specific about where this wants this. I'm going to turn off the assist. I think I'll make it this edge loop. I might change my mind later. Actually, you know what? I think I will change my mind. Do this edge loop. And we'll see how that goes. I might regret that. But this can be changed later. But I will have to rebuild the face to do that. So it might be a bit of a process to change that. Moving right on to our eyebrows. I'll go ahead and go to my layers and bring back my eyebrows. Turn off the smooth preview. And basically for each of these eyebrow points, we're just going to select the vertices which are just about at the corner of the eyebrows, but not quite there. So for eyebrow inner, I'm going to hit this vertice just short of the very last one. Hit eyebrow inner. Same thing on the other side, just short of the last one on the outside. And then eyebrow center. I'm going to grab the vertice that is right between them. So right there. And then I have optional extra eyebrow controls, which I'll go ahead and do. So it is just 3 more midpoints that I could define. I'm going to go ahead and actually define eyebrow mid 2 first. It'll be this one. Then I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one looks like the middle one there. That'll be eyebrow mid 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That looks like a good mid 3. Next up is our forehead. I'm going to go ahead and hide all my head parts again. With the forehead, we're going to select 3 vertices, which make kind of this triangle shape that goes from the corner of our eyelid to some point on the temple, all the way to the center of the forehead, then to the bridge of the nose, then back to the eyelid. So this might not be perfect. I think going to here should be a good one. I think it'll make a loop from, or an edge loop from there to there. And from here to here. No, here, that's the center. And then down to, let's say, this vertice. This will define the area affected by the eyebrows. So let's take a look. That's all right, but I think I want to make it a slightly larger space. I'm going to go back to vertices. Select this vertice in the forehead. Already here. How about this vertice? Let's try that. I'm going to delete that. Try one more time. Select this vertex and unselect that one. Just keep trying until you get an area that you think feels appropriate for the eyebrows. Alright, I think that should be good. Alright, for this next series, we're going to be just selecting one vertex. So for the jaw pivot, it's looking for something kind of right at the bottom eyelid level. Basically where your jawbone would actually connect around the zygomatic arch on your head. So I'm going to go to vertice, and I don't want it to be right on the ear. I think I'll do this vertice. Here, jaw pivot. Actually, I think I want it to be one above that. Right there should be good. Then the jaw corner. I'm going to try and get this right on this edge loop to right there, I think should be good. Just whatever it looks like the corner of your jaw. She's got kind of a soft corner there, so taking a bit of a guess. Actually, I think I will move it up one. Or move it to the side one. So right there. Jaw corner. The jaw's pretty easy. I'm going to come in here. Just find that middle vertice for the jaw. And this will replace the jaw from the body setup. That's okay. The throat placement's a little vague, but I think right here should be good for that. Just kind of right in the corner of the throat. Moving on to the cheek. So you can see that the cheek is just kind of this estimation between a little above the lips, a little below the nose, a little further to the side than the eyes. So I think right about there should be good. Cheekbone's going to be higher, closer to the eye itself. I think there should be fine. And cheek razor. This will be essentially kind of where your cheek, when it when your character smiles or something of the sort. Just kind of where is it rising up to kind of meet that eyelid. So right there, just under the eyelid looks good. Smile bulge. And the smile bulge looks like it is sort of right around where your mouth would crease. Maybe on the outer side of that, where it actually does make a bulge. So I'm going to put mine right there. And frown bulge is similar, but it's down low. I think I'm going to redo that smile bulge and move it a little closer, actually. Cheek bulge and smile bulge are kind of close together. We'll see how that goes. Next up is my nose. I'll throw that right on the tip. And there's the nose under. Right in that corner underneath the nose. And then nose corner. Put that right there. Past that point, the rest of these are optional. I'm going to do most of these, though, because most of them are pretty useful. So nose side. I'm going to go ahead and put it right here. And nose center. Looks like that's kind of just below the corners of the eyelids. So right there looks like a good place for the nose center. And then the nostril. This will be essentially a controller to sort of flare out your nostrils. Right here on the side. Should do nicely. Next, the tongue. It says no selection necessary. Let's see if that actually holds true. Turn on my transparent. My head parts. And sure enough, it has detected what is my tongue, since I already defined it earlier. I can do an optional pupil as well, an optional iris. This will let us actually scale our pupil and iris later on. So I'm going to select my eyeball. Now, because I have a double layered mesh here with a cornea and an eyeball underneath, I'm going to go in here really close. Select the edge loop for the pupil. And select, I have to make sure my camera's underneath the cornea, and select this iris as well. Hit iris. And undo my isolate select. Next, we can add in what's called an up, mid, low. And that basically lets us scale the upper, middle, and lower sections of the face or move them around. You don't need to make any selections for that. It just kind of puts it in. There's no reason really to not have it, I don't think, so you might as well. If you want, you can add a smile line, although the plugin itself recommends that you really only do this for somewhat realistic looking characters. As for simpler cartoony characters, it might not look very good. So that's really up to you. What's really looking for with this is a connection from the nostril down to the middle of the face. So I'm going to go from here to here. Select all these like that. And I think it should be good for my smile line. Turn off my isolate select and hit smile line. It is running through my smile bulge and my frown bulge. So I think I will actually move these again. Now I'm going to delete my smile bulge. Vertex. Put that again. I want it on the other side, I think, of my line. The frown bulge, I wish I had a little more geometry down here. I'm going to settle for this vertice. Actually, no, I think I will have smile bulge remain in the same spot. Or the frown bulge remain here. The smile bulge will have on the outside. The smile line should only really take up this space and not really down here, I don't think. If if you have a really high density model, it will let you define another eyelid main. So if you got a lot of polygons between where your eyelid meets the eyeball and the rest of the eyelid, you could add one here, but that's not necessary. I'm going to pass on this one. Okay, now with everything filled in, our face is ready to be built. I'm going to go up to File and make an incremental save. So with that all out of the way, finally close this tab and open up the Build tab and hit Build Advanced Face. And now this is going to run through your whole face and add joints and controllers and weights, do all sorts of stuff until you have a complete face rig. This phase will probably take quite a while, especially if you're running on a lower end machine. So just sit tight and wait for it to finish building your face rig. And then once it's done, you'll see at the bottom here, if you have your command responses open, you'll see face build complete. And so with that, you are ready to start testing out your face rig. And so next to your face, you'll have a neat little control panel. And we're just going to go through all these and kind of see what they do. So up at the top, we've got our eyebrows. Those are working pretty good. If you push them to the maximum, you'll get some pretty extreme results. Especially if your character looks like a realistic character, you'll probably not actually want to be animating all the way to this, but maybe you'll go to like here. Moving on, we've got eye controls. For your eyes, you can also use this floating controller. Eyes will look at that. And then there's these controllers which control your cheeks and kind of the squishing of your eyelids as your cheeks raise. Now that's got some interesting effects. So I might need to go back and move some of those vertices around. I think what's happening is the cheekbone is supposed to be further out here. The actual cheek itself is probably supposed to be lower. And if it inflates out, it's not so bad. But I think those controllers need to be adjusted just a little bit. But we'll move on for now. The nose will control the lips a little bit too. This is fine. And this is another example of getting some extreme poses that you certainly wouldn't always animate to, but a little bit is fine. Next we have our jaw. That opens pretty well. Make sure you want to view this in smooth preview. You'll get different results. You can see how those smile lines are coming in, but they're a bit extreme, so I don't want to go to the max. It also looks a little bit funny with her lips just kind of open like that. So I can just close these myself. That looks a little more natural. There we go. And these are the corners of the mouths. You can do a smile, frown. Once again, some of these are pretty extreme, but if you go to about here, these work out pretty well. Right in the middle between the corners of the lips and the mouth controller, you have this A, which basically lets you make automatic mouth shapes for different mouth sounds. So if you are lip syncing for a character, you could just run through all their dialogue as a first pass using just these sliders. And at the very bottom here, we have an emotion slider. So if you want to quickly knock out some emotions, there's happy, angry, so on and so forth. These aren't particularly great, but they are good if you need something quick. And to the right, we have these controllers which control entire regions of the face. So if you want to move like the whole eyebrow region, you can move that around. These are pretty drastic. You wouldn't use these too often unless there's some actual errors you need to kind of compensate for. Or if you're like making a smear frame, for example. Here's that face stretching I mentioned earlier. So you've got your midsection, and wow, that has some very unfortunate effects. You really would only use this with probably a cartoony character. You'd want to use this very sparingly. But you can get some funny poses with it when you're just messing around. All right, I'm actually very happy with most of that, so I'm not going to need to make a whole lot of changes, but I am questioning these cheeks. So I'm going to go ahead and redo those. So to do that, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to toggle Fit Shows Advanced. And I'm going to go back to Fit. I'm going to review the cheek and the cheekbone. The cheek, I think, should have been lower, perhaps. So I'm going to turn that off. Let's make it this vertice. And same thing with the cheekbone. It's there. Let's go and pre-select our vertice. Let's put it right here. Let's see what that, or no, right there. Let's see what that does for me. Turn off my cheekbone. Put it back in. Let's see how that looks. So we're gonna go over here. We're gonna rebuild advanced face. And like before, it's gonna run through all those steps again. And it should take about as long as it took the first time. Now it's finished. Let's take a look at that cheek again. It's got some clipping issues down here. The actual cheeks itself look all right. If I don't push it all the way, if I go to just about here, it actually looks like it's working as intended for the most part. Another thing I didn't check out was my blink. So on your eye controllers, you'll see in your channel box that you've got all these different controllers for your blink, squint, and the control of your pupil and iris, which we set up earlier. So if I just select my channel and then use my middle mouse to click and drag in either direction, I can move that value up and down. I can see my blink in progress. That's looking pretty good. And then with the blink, you might want to rotate your eyes around too, just to make sure those are looking okay. Make sure this is all in smooth preview. So there's a bit of an issue with our blink. When I have my smooth preview on, by pressing 3, there's a little bit of a gap formed in the smoothing process where you can still see my eyeball. So later I'm going to try and come up with a solution for that. It's pretty close though, so I'm not going to worry about it right this second. Of course, you can also select controllers directly on the face and move those individually for a greater level of control. So it's another good way to go through your whole face and just make sure everything's working properly. You can also control the blink by grabbing these controllers on the eyelids here. You can just do the top or the bottom blinks. I want to check on the inside too. There are tongue controllers, but they seem to be hidden. Looks like they're working all right, though. You just take it out, scale it down. Once again, if you want to move a controller or adjust it, you can select the controller, hold right click, go to Control Vertices, and going to my X-ray. You can select all these vertices right here. Just move them up. You scale them how you like. I'm going to go through and do it for these 3 controllers. And there, now you can grab those controllers, though they're still a bit difficult to reach. So I'm pretty happy with where things are so far, but there's a couple more things that I could do to refine this. So I'm going to move on a couple tabs and go down to the Delta Mush tab. And the first option we have here is to create a Delta Mush. Now, what the Delta Mush is creates a snapshot of the rest pose. And any deformations we make to this, it tries to apply smoothing to our character so that it more closely resembles the rest pose in a sense. Think of it as just another smoothing layer. It would be better to just kind of show off what this looks like rather than try to explain it because it's a bit complicated. So I'm going to move the corners of the lips to the maximum smile position. And you can see there's a lot of artifacting going on here. These faces are kind of folding in on each other, and this crease is really extreme. So what's going to happen when I create the Delta Mush is going to kind of smooth that out a little bit. And now that looks a bit more natural. But say maybe I didn't want the Delta Mush to affect all the areas of the face. I could then go over here to Paint Delta Mush. And I've already got my tool settings window open. And it's using the Paint Attributes tool. And so on my model switches to this black and white view. And anywhere it's white is where the Delta Mush is being applied. And where it's black, the Delta Mush is not being applied. So using my Paint Attributes tool, I'm going to set the value of my paint brush to 0 right here. I'm going to go over to my model. I'm going to paint in the corner of this mouth. And on the other side, I'm going to paint in this corner, just so you can see the difference. All right, and there you go. I'm going to go to show and hide my nerves curves so we can get a better look. You can see that there's a lot more artifacting now on this side where I turned off the Delta Mush, as opposed to this side where it's very smooth. However, maybe I want to retain some of this a little bit, so I could go back to my Paint Delta Mush, maybe set my value to 0.5. Just paint all that in again, just slightly. Make kind of on the sides, give it a 1. And right now I have my paint operation set to replace, but I can change it to smooth as well to kind of finish this area off if I wanted. There, and now I can bring back some of that line if I want to, while not completely forgoing the Delta Mush. When painting your Delta Mush, though, you want to make sure that your lips and eyes remain completely black at a 0 value. So if you ever get into a situation where you've painted in your lips or your eyelids, you can go back over here and select the eyelid area. Make sure your paint operation is set to replace. And then hit flood. Same thing with the lip area, hit flood that way. Oh, it looks like somewhere along the way, I made some kind of mistake that caused this to not be applied correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and delete my Delta Mush. See if that fixes it. Looks like it did. Actually, not quite. So something went wrong and my weights are pretty broken. So that means I'm going to have to go back and rebuild my face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my build pose. I'm going to hit rebuild advanced face. And it's going to go through all the steps again. But hopefully by redoing all the steps, it will fix the errors in my weights around her lips. All right, it's finished. And now I'm going to check my weights and see. And thankfully, it has indeed fixed my weights. However, I'm going to have to delete and recreate my Delta Mush because there's already one applied, but it doesn't seem to be working as intended. So I'm going to go to my face build pose. I'm going to delete Delta Mush and create Delta Mush again. There we go. Next step, I'm going to go over to head squash. Just going to create head squash. Very simple. It just gives us these additional controllers to make a lot of silly stretches to our head. And it might not be immediately apparent how this works. This middle shape seems to be a bit odd. And right out of the box, it does really weird things because it goes through the whole body. So we want to reset that and we want to hit optimize head squash. Take a second. And now head squash only affects the head. So as I noticed earlier, when she blinks with smooth preview on, there's this gap in her eyelid. So I figured out there are two ways that I can deal with this, an easy way and a hard way. The easy way is when blinking, I can just set it to 11 blink and that closes the gap. You can't middle mouse and slide to 11. It caps out at 10, but you can just write 11 and it'll get you there. So whenever you're animating, you can just use the value 11. However, if you wanted to fix this permanently, as well as any other more drastic fixes you might need to make with your model, you could convert your face rig into a hybrid face rig. Remember before we started with a joint rig, and we talked about blend shapes and hybrid face rigs? Well, we can, at this point, convert it to a hybrid rig by going to the blend shapes tab here. And we're going to go ahead and check this box to keep our joints because we still want those. And then at the bottom here, I'm going to hit convert. It's going to go through and make blend shapes for every possible pose for all of our joints. It'll take a minute. And once it's done, we'll have blend shapes. You'll notice nothing has changed visibly. It all still looks the same. Blink is still the same. But now we can go to edit blend shapes. And from here we have a few different options. And I'm going to make sure that my face is in my build pose. So I'm going to select the attribute I want to change the blend shape for. I'm going to turn it up to the maximum. And then I'm going to, in Edit Blend Shapes, select Extract Blend Shape Target. So what it's done is it has extracted the blend shapes for my blink attribute. So the blend shapes are basically copies of my model that have a slight modification on it that pertain to a specific attribute. And when I turn on that attribute, my model will actually adjust to match the changes of this blend shape here. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to isolate select this model. I'm going to hit 3 to smooth preview it. See that gap still. I'm going to go to face mode. I'm just going to select all these faces that are making up this gap. I'm just going to rise them up. Make sure you don't have any control selected when you're doing this from your main model. I think I had the eye controller still selected. So I've restarted my selection process. Cover those faces again and pull them up. Rotate them just a bit. It's okay if I create a little overlap here, that's fine. There, I've closed my gap. I'm going to exit my isolate select, object mode. Once I'm done, I'm going to go over here and hit delete the targets when finished. Now if I look on my eye, that eyelid is completely closed with no gap. And the same thing on the other eye as well. So you want to work from just the one side, and it'll just automatically mirror over to the other side. And I want to fix that eyelash as well. So I'm going to do the same thing, extract the target. Just grab these vertices. And we should look at I've crashed Maya. So that's exactly why you should be saving often, and you should be saving incrementally so that you have lots of versions to work with. I have 11 versions right now. I really should probably have a lot more than that even, so I've not been saving often enough. But thankfully, I did not lose too much progress. So I'm just gonna zip right through this and get back to where I was before the crash. And there we go. Delete that. Check on the other side. There we go. Blink is working as intended. Great. And finally, once you want to really test out your character's facial expressions, you can apply a test animation by going to Tools and Animation Tester. And it pops up this little window, and you can just open Face, and you can import Face Test Animation. And it takes a second to apply. And then down here at your timeline, you can just scrub through. I'm going to turn off my controllers. And you'll just scrub through a very, very basic stress test of all your different face poses. These are by no means fantastic poses. These are really not tailor-made for any particular character. They're more of a stress test than anything. But it's really good if you just need something to really quickly show that your face is correctly rigged. If you want to just hit play, you can hit the play button down here. It might run through a little too fast though, so go ahead and hit this little gearbox with the running man. Bring up your time slider preferences. And then in playback, go down to max playback speed and make sure it is set to 24 FPS times 1. And that'll ensure that it actually runs at 24 FPS and doesn't just play as many frames as quickly as possible. We'll hit play again. It's going to run through nice and smoothly. Once you're done with the test animation, go over to the animation tester window and hit remove face animation. It'll just reset back to the default. Great, and that's it for our face. A lot can go wrong on the face, so it's nice that that was a relatively pain-free experience. I hope that your experience is as pain-free as it was for me. If you have run into complications, have patience. This is probably the most complicated part of the rigging. So if you can get this down, then it is all smooth sailing from hopefully. So with that, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.